Well, we're here, and welcome everybody. And pardon me for being here just a second late, but I didn't share it to the right page to stream in the first place. So let me share this out real quick on Facebook, and then we'll go ahead and start the show because we are here. So yeah, we are live, and we're here, and I am joined by
Scott Wilson.
The lovely and talented Scott T. Wilson is in the house, and I'm Stevie Stroh here with you. We're here for episode 32 of our show, Culture Goes Pop. And we got two main things that we're going to talk about today. What is our primary topic today, Mr. Wilson?
Well, our primary topic is the hip-hop tribute, the 50th anniversary of hip-hop tribute they did on the Grammys. I wish I could say that the rest of the Grammys was a high priority for me, but I'm not a big award show guy, save for little things like this. I grew up watching the Grammys and the American Music Awards, but as I get older, it's less and less of a priority for me. But this year, I kind of had to pay attention to what they had going on for the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and there's some controversy behind it too. So we'll get into that.
That's pretty impressive that it's been around 50 years.
Yeah.
That means that I was like 5 when that came out. The first song I remember hearing most predominantly was Rapper's Delight, but that's not even necessarily the first one because they're saying it goes back to like 1973, and I don't think Rapper's Delight came out till later.
They're talking about the culture itself, not so much the rappers. Probably didn't come around until, and I got this from the guy that directed a movie called Wild Style, which was one of, if not the first hip hop movie made in 1982, and Charlie Ahern, and he told me that rapping as a thing started in New York City in like 77 or 78, and I think certain other people like Grandmaster Caz have like confirmed that. Although, I mean, you can go back to, some people even want to trace it back to Pick Me Markham, Here Comes the Judge, and that was done. I'm trying to remember, my memories is not working well right now, but that came out in the late 60s. I think maybe 68 or so. And it's, it's got him basically rapping over a breakbeat backing, although there is, again, some controversy over whether or not that has any direct connection to the movement that would become hip-hop, the overall culture. But when they say 73, that birth date, they're talking about the culture itself, not just rap.
Not just, okay. Okay. Fair enough. We'll definitely get into the hip-hop performance. So, and like you say, I'm not a big awards show person either. When I did watch award shows, I was more interested in watching like the MTV music,
right.
the MTV movie awards, because that seemed to be more driven by the fans than the industries and old fuddy-duddies. So MTV Music Awards were always fun to watch, although I remember there was a streak for felt like 10 years straight where Twilight just swept every single award. And I was like, come on, really? There's other movies out there where they give Chewbacca an award one year. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the big award shows. However, there's one that just happened just recently too, maybe a month or two ago. I'm trying to remember if it was the Billboards or it wasn't the Grammys, but they did a Lifetime Achievement the award they gave to Lionel Richie. Right. And they had Stevie Wonder playing a lot of Lionel, just like little quips, playing a bunch of little clips from different songs. But to see Stevie Wonder live was great. And the reason why I mentioned that is because that was one of the opening performances of this year's Grammys was Stevie Wonder and Smokey Robinson playing together. And Stevie's still got it. His voice is great. He seems like he's in reasonably good health. But it's one of those, our living legends are not going to be living forever.
Legend. In his case, is an understatement. I mean, Smokey.
So I really enjoyed seeing that Stevie Wonder performance with Smokey Robinson. Those are both iconic legends in the kind of the R&B scene. And again, playing a lot of medleys of songs. Like they did Higher Ground, and a lot of people probably are more familiar with the Red Hot Chili Peppers cover of Higher Ground, but Stevie Wonder did that before they did. And so a lot of great performances there before we got into the hip-hop. I know I'm starting to sound like an old man, but I'm not as much of a fan, or do not even know who a lot of the new artists are. So when you have the insert flavor of the week song and artist of the week thing here,
I'm right there with you.
that just doesn't motivate me that much because, again, I'm going to sound old, but a lot of new music just kind of sucks. Although I do like some of it, I don't like all of it. Even new hip hop, I'm behind the scenes on new hip hop. I grew up on '80s hip hop, mostly East Coast, and then in the '90s West Coast with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, things like that. So so those were the two takeaways for me: was the opening number, which was with Stevie Wonder, and then the big hip hop tribute, which again my wife and I recognize a good portion of the artists, but there were so many, and you don't recognize them some of them now. But it was great. So why don't we just roll right into that whole hip hop thing, and you take it away, and I'll jump in because you are definitely more of a hip hop expert than I am.
Well, the list of performers and songs, and they didn't do the full songs. Of course, it was only about 13 minutes.
It was a medley, yeah.
So yeah, it was a medley, and in some cases, there for these group songs from certain groups, iconic songs from certain groups, only one member was there to represent for the entire group, and in one case that's caused a bit of controversy. But it starts out with Grandmaster Flash, flash to the beat and the message. So it starts out firmly.
Don't push me, cause I'm close to
in the early 80s.
Edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. Oh yeah.
The message is kind of.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. It's kind of a seminal song because that song sort of was a big bang. It started a lot of different avenues in hip hop. It kind of unofficially started the socially conscious side of rap music, but also, in a sense, the gangster side, because Melly Mel's verse in there vividly describes a life of poverty and crime in a way that hadn't been done up until that point in 1982. And a lot of people, especially certain West Coast rappers like Too Short, who's actually a part of this medley and tribute, they took a cue from that, and they realized, so we can kind of talk vividly about where we're from and the conditions that exist in those places in a way that we couldn't before. And then a lot of those artists took it way further in terms of how profane they got and how dark it could get. And and then now we come to Run DMC with King of Rock, which is
that's an anthem. It is an absolute anthem.
It's an anthem, but it's also significant in that it sort of was prescient and that it foretold the coming takeover of in the video. I think, if I remember correctly, Run and DMC are kicking over statues of the Beatles in a museum, and this.
Oh wow! I don't remember that.
And they even say it, and then a line of something. This is not Michael Jackson. We're not the Beatles, or something like that.
Okay.
So they're announcing. You guys don't know it yet, but we're the new rock stars.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. There is none high. I suck at MC. You should call me sire. Yep. Learn my kingdom. You must use fire, because I won't stop rocking till I retire. Whoa, yes. I remember old stuff. I don't know any of the new stuff.
Yeah, they announced them. They announced it. This is the change.
Rock Box was one of the first songs from Run DMC to kind of fuse rock and rap.
And along with Michael Jackson, they were some of the first black performers to ever appear on MTV. Again, you have LL Cool J and Jazzy Jeff. I Can't Live Without My Radio and Rock the Bells.
That was great seeing LL Cool J.
LL was in many ways, he's important because in many ways he was the first true superstar of the genre. He was the first sort of heartthrob icon, just the way he carried himself, taking off his shirt and with his muscles and
then the fashion that came along with rap, the Kangols, the Adidas, my Adidas jumpsuits, all that kind of stuff. Hip hop has influenced so much stuff, from fashion to definitely fashion, graffiti style stuff. The big sunglasses that Run DMC wore. Flavor Flav it was great seeing Flavor Flav. When he came out there, and so Flavor Flav with the clock. There's so many things that hip hop has done that has influenced not only musical genre, become its own genre, but influenced fashion through the years too.
And then we get next to someone who is very important to me to see him up there, and that is. And I have on the shirt of the duo that he was a part of, Eric B. and Rakim. Rakim came on to perform Eric B. as president. Now, for those who do not know, Rakim is a man who some would say single-handedly, but not really single-handedly, but he was at the head of the class of rappers in the mid to late 80s who changed rap lyricism. Before Rakim, you had some of the names we mentioned, Run DMC, rappers had these very loud voices that came from the chest. The rhymes were very simplistic, often call and response, and a lot of stuff was on a downbeat and everything else. Rakim made everything more complex and more, his voice was very laid back. It was a baritone, and he had a slower flow, which initially one of the most important producers in the history of rap music, Marley Marl, laughed at him for and said, "What are you doing?" when he got in the booth. He said, "You need to say it with more energy." But Rakim did a thing called internal rhymes. He was also a musician in high school, so he had more of a jazz musician approach. And Rakim sort of overnight evolved, along with KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane, and a few other names, evolved the craft of MCing and rapping into something that became more artistically complex. And now after Rakim, who you have his Long Island, New York peers from the same era, Chuck D and Flavor Flav, Public Enemy, with Rebel Without a Pause, and
They did Bring the Noise too, didn't they?
I don't remember. Don't remember. They may have done it, but yeah, you can't really have this without Public Enemy. Now, one very important thing to note right here is that I think it was the 1989 Grammys, either 88 or 89. Boy, my memory is just, oh my God. These things used to be right in the back of on the back of my hand all the time. Rappers protested the Grammys because the Grammys, while I believe they had rap categories, they wouldn't allow rappers to perform at the ceremony. Will Smith, Jazzy Jeff, and the Fresh Prince were part of that protest. So was Public Enemy, who had a famous line in one of their songs, Terminator X on the Edge of Panic. Famously, Flav said, "Who gives a F about a GD Grammy?" So rap, and that. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. No, but as much as that, obviously historically there's been a lot of things that there are various forms of exclusion and stuff. But I think it was the Grammys or something else too, where they didn't even, like, the first year they added, like, quote unquote heavy metal as a whatever genre, what do you want to call it, category. The two bands they picked between were Metallica, which obviously is heavy metal, and then Jethro Tull, which is a band from the 60s that hadn't even released an album in God knows how long, didn't really fit into the heavy metal category. You could have picked something like Motorhead, or
they weren't giving it proper consideration.
Yeah, they didn't even. They were clueless. Yeah. They were literally clueless.
Every new genre. Seems to go for that.
And then I think even Jethro Tull ended up winning, and they didn't even show up because they're like, this is, somebody screwed up somewhere. We're not flying to the United States to not win an award that we're not even qualified to get. But yeah, just to show you how clueless these industries have been historically.
And it's insulting to the guys who actually are a part of that genre.
Yeah.
And I think they probably realize that too. We're not going to do that to fellow artists. Okay, and I'm going to, since we have so many names here, I'm going to try to condense this the best I can. We have Black Thought from The Roots, who is, for those of you, and I want to, because I've gone to Universal Studios a couple of times in the last month and change, and Jimmy Kimmel has a ride there.
Okay.
And The Roots are a part of that. For those of you who just think of The Roots as a house band, I've been listening to The Roots since about 1996, and they were out 4 years before that. They aren't just a house band, and Black Thought is a powerhouse of an MC. There is footage of him online. I can't remember what show he was on, where he freestyled for, I think, must have been 15 minutes. He is one of the unsung, again, he's just a dynamo in that lane. Like, he's a rapper's rapper. He's the kind of rapper that other rappers listen to and say, okay, I want to beat this guy. But yeah, Black Thought and LL Cool J, they did it had an interlude called El Shabazz Skit. Then we have Pasta News of De La Soul with Buddy. De La Soul, another group from Long Island, New York, who were outside of the five boroughs, but Long Island in the late 80s had a big impact on the music. They brought a lot of new styles and ideas. De La were kind of like, they were labeled the hippies of hip hop at the time, because they didn't wear jewelry or tracksuits or anything. They were kind of suburban kids, and their music kind of reflected this sort of quirky worldview that wasn't from the Bronx or Harlem or Brooklyn or any place like that. And they became very important. Again, they pushed the music forward and created a whole new lane for people. And unfortunately, on my birthday, which was February 12th, Sunday, Trugoy the Dove from De La Soul passed away at 54 years old. And that was just, a lot of guys I know were very messed up about that. So,
happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
I saw you before your birthday. When did we get together for our little cocktail? Your birthday was 2 days ago. When did we get together? Sunday night? I think it was Sunday night.
No, it was maybe Thursday.
I don't remember.
Wednesday, Thursday? I can't remember.
Yeah, we were going to record an episode last week and then didn't get together, so we just went and had margaritas.
Yeah, right.
Which is more important.
Right, which is more important. Now we get to
But so at least I did get a chance to do something with you right around your birthday. So
right.
I don't feel completely guilty. Happy birthday, Scott. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. So we get to, sound like Elvis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now we get to Scarface, Mind Playing Tricks on Me, which is now we get to some of the controversy that has been surrounding this tribute. Scarface, who is part of a legendary rap group called the Ghetto Boys, but then Scarface became a legend in his own right. He is now considered to be not only arguably the greatest rapper of all time from the South, because he's from the Ghetto Boys from Houston, Texas, as is he, but he's also considered one of the greatest rappers of all time, period. A quick list of rappers that he's influenced. Tupac. He had an influence on Tupac and collaborated with Tupac. And when you listen to, Kool D famously said, when you listen to Tupac's vocal style, you hear a lot of Scarface in it. Scarface's songs are very dark. They revolve around not just street life in Houston, but the drug game and the effects that it has. And a lot of them are first-person narratives about being a drug dealer and the violence that it includes. And you can hear the presence of death in his songs. He has a voice that's almost like a southern version of Chuck D. It's just, again, it's very loud. It's very much from the chest. But his music is very powerful. Biggie Smalls, the Notorious Big, was also heavily influenced by Scarface, as was Jay-Z. Nas was a lot of the greatest rappers of the last 25, 30 years were influenced by Face. But Mind Playing Tricks on Me is a Ghetto Boys song, perhaps the most famous song they ever did. And Willie D, another member of the Ghetto Boys, who has a podcast with Scarface called Ghetto Boys Reloaded, is not happy that Scarface performed without him, mainly because this is a Ghetto Boys song.
Okay.
I can kind of understand why he's upset, but also Scarface didn't even do a full verse. So,
but the thing too is that this, you're going through, artist by artist, giving a little history on there. But ultimately, there's two takeaways I have from this. Number one, it was an incredible performance. It was a huge ensemble.
Yeah.
And so, since we're also right around the same time as the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl is the two best teams from the entire season playing off. The Super Bowl has something that's called the Pro Bowl. And the Pro Bowl is all the top players that put on an exhibition game. This is kind of like the Pro Bowl of rap music. And so we're celebrating 50 years. They put on this huge performance, and it was just artist after artist after artist. It was a giant medley. It was live, and it was lit. It was like when I texted you, I go, dude, I'm watching this. This is lit. I mean, I love hip hop. I'm not a huge fan. I'm definitely not a scholar, but I like this. It's like a lot of music. I like a little bit of country. I like a lot more hip hop than I like country. But I have a lot of musical interests, but I like hip hop. I don't like it all, but I recognize probably more than half of the artists in the songs in there. I was like, oh man, this is great, this is great. But it was an incredible performance, and it was celebrating 50 years of this style of music, and we should just be happy with that we're getting this showcase. We're being able to have this retrospective moment and celebration, and not make it about a personal, well, you're singing something that I didn't get a chance to sing. That's getting into some bitch level stuff going on.
I'd be inclined to agree, but from the moment they announced this, I kind of knew that I kind of just knew it's one of those things that it's not going to please everybody. And like I said, in the case of hip hop, some of the gatekeeping that went on since the 80s, and some of it still goes on now, the genre and the fans of the genre, like myself, tend to be very prickly and gun shy whenever we feel like there's gatekeeping, quote unquote gatekeeping going on. So sometimes you get these overreactions to things that others might look at and say, hey, that's, why are you guys getting so annoyed with that? So I mean, like I said, this kind of thing, I don't envy the person, the producers or whoever had to organize this, because they probably knew, okay, we're going to get roasted by a lot of people, but but it's a tribute. What are you going to do? You have to.
Right. And we've been trying to find, for the past 2 or 3 days, we've been trying to find clips online.
And they've taken
and they're just
down.
non-existent. And I have a feeling we're not going to show any clips, period, because of copyright strikes.
Yeah.
But trying to find a clip of that performance, the Grammys website doesn't have it. It's blurred out. Nobody's got it, because there's so many artists from so many different labels to get all of the royalties and licensing and everything else to be able to re-air this subsequently to the live performance. It's just going to be a logistical financial nightmare. So it's just easier to not show it and not get sued by 400 different entities.
Right.
So I get that. But when you're doing something live, live is live. When you're doing live and you're doing tribute stuff, you can kind of get away with it in the moment of being live. But whenever you go to re-air anything, then you have to deal with all the copyright stuff. So yeah, you can't find these clips online right now. Although I did find one that looks like somebody was taking stuff with his phone that was there. So it was like kind of a tall video. And that was something. But yeah, I would love to. If they were to sell that, I would buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's history, and it was a great performance. It was just boom, 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 boom. It was electric. Yeah.
And then, okay, so yeah, and with Scarface, it brings us firmly into the early 90s, 91 to be exact. Because I remember when these songs came out, I was 14. When both of these, this Mind Playing Tricks and Mind Playing Tricks was probably one of the biggest hit rap songs to deal with mental illness in a very explicit way. And then now you have Ice-T with New Jack Hustler.
Is that the theme song from New Jack City?
That's the famous theme song.
The funny thing is now is that it's so hard to remember that some of these rappers were rappers when they've gone on to be known as like TV and movie stars. Like Ice-T is doing the Law and Order.
That was unheard of at the time.
You know what I mean?
When he did
so
that,
Ice-T is more known now for doing Law and Order. And honestly, like Ice Cube. I mean, when Ice Cube did like Friday. And subsequent Friday, first Friday was the best. But to me, that was still kind of legitimizing being from Compton. It wasn't like he sold out.
Right.
But when he started doing these movies where he's like Mr. Dad and he's got the camper and he's got the kids and he's trying to do comedy, I'm like, wait a second, you're Ice Cube. You're from NWA. What is going on here? You start to figure, is this guy losing his legit card? But brother's getting paid too. But now Ice Cube is, for a lot of people, more known as the guy who's done comedy. And other things, and Ice-T is being known for Law and Order, but these guys were legit hardcore rappers back in the day.
Well, that speaks to another sort of harsh reality about this stuff. Is first you rage against the machine, and then you become a part of it.
Because at the end of the day, that the dollar,
and also there's certain. When something becomes legitimized or canonized, there are certain things that are not accessible to you when you're raging against the machine, and that's why you're raging against it. It's kind of it's an irony.
Right.
You're raging against it because you don't have access to all these things that you would criticize other people for being a sellout if they had access to it.
Right.
But you're mad because you don't. So now we're kind of in a space where, because a lot of the performers I've mentioned on this list are people that when I was a kid, we dreamed of seeing these guys being honored on an award show.
Right, because it was so underground, it was so cult. Yeah. I'm just it's the sign of the times now. Because I've got a 14-year-old daughter now, and she's listening to Spotify, and she's got a playlist of songs. And I'm like, how do you even know these songs? She's like, well, this is my music. It's not on the radio. These are my artists. These are songs I listen to. She listens to a lot of the trap stuff, and everybody's got Lil in front of their name, Lil. But she knows all these artists that you're not going to hear on the radio. So how are people learning about music now? Well, you find one artist you like, and then it'll suggest if you like Bob, then try Tom.
You get a whole
Dick, and
playlist,
Harry. Right?
yeah.
But I remember I had to hear about music by having somebody bring in a cassette tape, and you put it in your boombox, right? So, and I grew up in Miami, as far from New York as possible, but a lot of people from New York came to Miami, especially me growing up in the '80s, and so I heard all kinds of New York, East Coast rap music and hip hop music on cassette tapes, and like heard like complete whole DJ shows that were played on the radio in New York, all the mixes and everything, and we heard them down in Miami. So we learned about music by people just passing tapes to one another. That's how we learned about comedians. I remember hearing Andrew Dice Clay on a cassette tape, and you kind of giggle because I'm a kid. I shouldn't be hearing all these curse words, but the underground movement back then was people bringing tapes to parties and hanging out, and that's how I learned about a lot of hip hop, especially New York hip hop, growing up in Miami.
And it's also important to note Miami had its own underground rap scene called Miami Bass. That's the scene that produced 2 Live Crew.
Well, yeah, I grew up with 2 Live Crew. They ended up coming to my high school. I'd already graduated by then, but they came to my high school a few times. But yeah, Luther Campbell made it big, especially with all the censorship stuff and kind of winning out over that.
Yeah, but Miami Bass, that was a whole underground scene that produced a lot of party records here that became like sort of regional hits,
right?
And some even national hits,
right? So, yeah, there was actually what was called the Miami Sound, and then we had a radio station back then called Power 96 that played a lot of that Miami Sound, which was mostly people from New York, but they just came and recorded in Florida, and they created the Miami Sound, like TKA and a bunch of these bands created the Miami Sound, which was cool. But they all look like New Yorkers. You see them on the beach, and they're wearing like black socks and shorts and stuff. You're not dressed like a Floridian dude. You're dressed like a damn tourist, right? So yeah.
And I know a lot. I know there was a big disco label that was
Stevie B was a guy who did a lot of house music. That was a Miami guy. Not quite hip hop.
I'm trying to remember the name of the label. There was a disco label down here. It was one of the most important disco labels, and there was a guy from this area, named Clarence Reed, aka Blowfly. Blowfly was like he recorded a lot of underground party records, very profane and very raunchy. And he also was arguably, some people argue that he was one of the first rappers because he did have certain songs that were rap songs or like rap songs, even before before the ones from New York started coming out. So yeah, Florida definitely. That's a whole
and freestyle, like what they now call freestyle music, was a lot of what we call. That's what we called the Miami Sound back in the '80s. Was what now people refer to as freestyle music.
Yeah, Miami
still got a good resurgence.
Yeah, Miami has its own. That's a whole. You could do a whole podcast in of itself on the history of Miami music.
Yeah, but we're talking about the hip hop thing right now. So.
Right. So next we get to Queen Latifah, UNITY.
UNITY.
I remember in '93 when that came out. I was in I think was that.
And again,
10th grade.
Queen Latifah is more known as a movie star now. She's doing the Enforcer. What's that show she's doing now? That was
The Equalizer.
The Equalizer, yeah.
But this song. This song was written by the late great Heavy D, and it was it was an anti-misogyny anthem, and it was a great song.
Yeah.
Even now, I love the sample.
The nice thing about hip hop historically is that women rappers really were empowering women. Because a lot of early hip hop was about bitches ain't shit and bitches and hoes and all this kind of stuff, and just talking about shawty, and women were very objectified, whereas the female rappers are very strong female leads that are speaking out, giving women their own voice, saying, "Hey, men are bitches too." You know what I mean?
Well, there was actually, and there was a lull in that for a long time. There weren't, aside from Nicki Minaj, there weren't a lot of prominent female rappers for a minute, and that's changing again now.
Well, Salt and Pepper, which was on the list. Did you even mention Salt and Pepper? They were earlier up on the list. I don't know if you mentioned them, but yeah.
Geez, my eyes are skipping some of this stuff.
Salt and Pepper were great. Seeing them, they look great.
Well, Salt and Pepper's they were the Run DMC of female rappers.
Yeah,
I mean, they get just. They get overlooked, just like I just overlooked them right now on this list. They get overlooked because they sold a lot of records.
Yeah, because they were so commercially successful, you almost take for granted that they are not only but powerful women of color, and hip hop artists. But their songs were on pop radio. You didn't have to listen to a hip hop station or a black station or anything. You could listen to any station and you could hear Salt and Pepper. They made it. It's like the Fat Boys. Are the Fat Boys still alive? In the history of hip hop, the human beatbox should have been in there.
Well, unfortunately, Buffy the Human Beatbox, he died in '95. I'm actually Facebook friends with the last remaining Fat Boy, Cool Rock. He's actually a really nice guy, really good person. But yeah, Prince Marky D, he died a few years ago, unfortunately. And Prince Marky D actually went on to have a great career as a producer. He produced for Mary J. Blige and a lot of people, so he had a second breath. And I think in Miami, he was actually a radio personality for a while.
Okay.
So,
and while we're talking about producers, let's not forget, we'll finish the list, but let's go back and we need to mention the Dr. Dre Lifetime Achievement Award that they named after him that they're now going to give to everybody else moving forward. Another great influencer and producer in this genre.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Dre, I mean, the NWA family tree is that's one of the most prominent. That family tree, that NWA family tree gave birth. Eminem is part of the NWA family tree. Bone Thugs and Harmony is part of that tree. Ice Cube is a part of that tree.
Ice Cube, Eazy-E, who unfortunately died, but yeah, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Eazy-E.
50 Cent is a part of that
50 Cent.
You know, everything that Dre's had success with is part of that tree. So, I mean, you can't, Dr. Dre's kind of become the Quincy Jones of hip-hop.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's nice for him, again, being recognized, having this musical genre finally recognized and legitimized and celebrated. It's only taken 50 years. It's not that they weren't making money. So, but to be recognized by the establishment is good.
And then after Queen Latifah, you had Method Man with Method Man, a representative of my favorite group ever, the Wu-Tang Clan. And, you know, it's funny because there's two songs that people know from Wu-Tang, even if they don't know the group that well. One of them is going to be Method Man, the other one is probably going to be Cream. So it was just nice that he was there representing the Wu, you know, on such a wide scale. And that's just, what's great about this is that younger viewers who are watching it, who may see some of these songs and like them, it can give some of these groups a second wind.
Absolutely, when we talk about trailers, all the Notorious B.I.G. stuff, Biggie Smalls is needle dropping in all these new movie trailers. Yeah. So the fact that you know, sometimes it takes seeing like Thor Ragnarok to say, holy shit, Led Zeppelin's a band? I like that song. You know, Guns N' Roses was in Love and Thunder, and they were all over the place. So although I know who Guns N' Roses are, you know, somebody who's 10 years old now has no reason to know it, but they see the movie, they hear the song, they like the song. Well, let me check out this band. So this is another way to you know, introduce new generations to legacy artists.
And then you have the irrepressible Busta Rhymes with Put Your Hands Where My Eyes Could See, Look at Me Now, two of his probably best songs. Put Your Hands Where My Eyes Could See, I think that's probably his best known song. And Busta, who's one of the just most energetic and dynamic performers ever in hip hop. Just a different, you know, he does that speed rapping thing in a way that's just like, I mean, his mouth can go a mile a minute, and the breath control it takes to do that is just like insane.
It's, you know, it's so weird because when people talk fast in general, they're fast talkers, and people who talk really fast, it's usually people who are really smart. Like I know a lot of really intelligent people, and they talk blah, 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 because their brain is going so fast, but their mouth is able to keep up with it, and they just talk quickly. But talking is one thing, but when you're singing and you're lyricizing, to be able to do it quickly is mental control, physical control. There's just so many levels of skill and talent and physical and mental mind-body coordination to be able to speed rap and make it make sense.
Right.
And for me to even I have a hard time just listening to it quickly. To be able to think that fast and verbalize that quickly would be an impossible task for me, the mere mortal. So the speed rap stuff, when it's done well and you can hear it and understand it cohesively, it's really cool. And then when you add in the cadence to that as well, it's not just speed, random flow of words. There's cadence to it. Right. There's rhythmics to it. That's just a whole nother level of talent.
And yeah, definitely. And then you have Missy Elliott.
And she looked good. She looked, because Missy has been big. She's been a big girl. She like slimmed down. Missy looked really good.
And also, and with Missy, I think it gets lost again, like salt and pepper. It kind of gets lost in the sauce how important Missy is. As she's not just an artist; she's
She's
a producer,
a huge collaborator.
songwriter.
She's
Yeah.
been like on the Moulin Rouge thing. She has collaborated with everybody. She is like, that's why I like when you have a song and it's not necessarily a rap song, but then you have like a rapper come in and do like the equivalent of a guitar solo. Missy has been like featuring Missy Elliott. She's been featured on so many things.
Yeah, well, that's sort of an extension of, like I said, she as a producer and songwriter, because I think she was doing that before she became an artist in her own right, and she had a lot of hits on R&B and black radio with other groups and other artists. She's part of that collective. She's from Virginia, and she's part of a collective that included Timbaland, the producer, and they kind of had their own sound. And she's just, in terms of artists that are sort of a one man or one woman force, where you could put her in a studio and she doesn't really need anybody else.
Right. Kind of like a Pharrell Williams, where she can be her own artist and a great producer, collaborator.
Pharrell and the Neptunes, that's Virginia. That's part of that whole. They were part of that whole sound. They were, you know. So Missy, you cannot. You have to, if you talk about her, and
Missy.
Yeah, right. If you talk about her. When you talk about like
nothing but love, nothing but respect for
late '90s into the early 2000s,
Missy Misdemeanor Elliott.
And you have Nelly, and I'm going to be honest here.
It's getting hot in here.
I've never been much of a Nelly fan.
All your clothes, but it's.
But I acknowledge
he's kind of like that song is kind of like achy breaky heart for country. Real country fans cannot stand the fact that Billy Ray Cyrus did Achy Breaky Heart, but he got a whole bunch of people who didn't listen to country listen to country. So Hot in Here, to me, has got to be something like that.
And what I'll say about Nelly, I mean, even though I'm not a big fan, I acknowledge his impact and his influence, and you know, he's talented. He's definitely talented, but it's just the brand of the type of rap music that he does is just, it's never really been my cup of tea per se. But
it's club stuff. It's anthem stuff. It's like get you pumping, get on the dance floor, and it's kind of like what's the other one? God, I keep going. I can't think of the guy's name right now. Usher. You know, Usher is another one where you hear Usher, and if you might have been standing on the sidelines. The minute they start blasting Usher at the club, you're on the dance floor. You know what I mean? So
Usher's a powerhouse.
Yeah. So that Hot in Here, that's gonna get you. That's gonna even get the old white guys on the dance floor out there. So it's gonna get the ladies on there. It's gonna get the wallflowers on there. So you kind of need that club motivation sometimes. You need that like anthem type stuff.
And then you got Too Short with Blow the Whistle. Now Too Short is a name. For those who don't know, Too Short was an underground rapper in Oakland. He started in the early 80s. He became known for writing dirty raps. His raps are very sexually explicit and profane. And he was probably, even before Two Live Crew, he was doing that. But the thing with Short, he did it over these really funky bass-heavy beats. He was one of the first rappers to sort of emphasize non-sample based production and bring in session players and musicians to sort of lay down funky grooves that he could rap, and he was one of the first rappers to really target the car stereo culture. His raps are very bass heavy.
Oh yeah,
and they have that 808 kick drum in them, and but he became a very important and legendary artist. This was a guy that was consistently from about 1988 to I'd say maybe 96. Was consistently selling gold, platinum, and better with no radio play and very little video play. He again, and he's one of those guys like Scarface before him that even if he never got the mainstream recognition, but a lot of mainstream rappers took influence from what he did and built on it. And so he's sort of, you can't talk about the history without talking. And he also was, again, independently speaking, he was one of the first rappers to show the importance of the independent spirit and independent business. And, you know, he started out actually making little mixtapes with his partner, whose name I can't remember right now. And they would just make little cassette tapes for...
Well, speaking of Miami and mixtapes, but that's how Pitbull got started.
Yeah.
He was doing his own recordings and this... staying on the street corner with a suitcase full of CDs or cassette tapes and just selling his music out. And that's how he got discovered. And he's another kind of artist / producer.
Right. But yeah, right. Well, a lot of rappers started out that way. And Too Short was probably arguably one of, if not the first. He was actually making tapes for the drug dealers around his way because he would give them shout outs in the raps.
like neighborhood shout outs. Yeah, it's just
and they would
very localized.
Yeah, they would drive around in their, expensive sports cars, Cadillacs, whatever, and they would bump these custom made tapes, and they would pay a certain fee for them, and it's kind of ingenious when you think about like doing that.
Yeah, you have a target audience. People love hearing you calling the radio station, gonna get a shout out. Yeah, everybody wants to hear their name.
And then you have the Locks and Swizz Beats. The Locks, who I kind of have an affinity for because they were from Yonkers, and I was working in Yonkers when they blew up, and they were affiliates. They were part of the Rough Riders crew, which also gave the world DMX. And DMX was also from Yonkers. And I used to see one of the members of the Lock, Chic Luch. I used to see him at a movie theater down there, Cross County Movie Theater. I used to see him down there. So We Gonna Make It, which is actually, I think that's if I'm not mistaken, I think that's a Jadakiss solo record. Jadakiss is a member of the Locks. He is he's just an amazing lyricist. He took out a whole crew known as Dipset in one of the verses a couple of years ago, basically with a single verse that he'd already done on a mixtape, and he just did it there, and he just destroyed them in a battle, and it was just an amazing thing to see. Now, the last three people on this list, I would have to bring my son on to talk about because
the new generation. Yeah. Lil. Whenever you have Lil in front, Lil in front of an artist's name, you know they're new.
Right. It's Lil Baby, Glorilla, and Lil Uzi Vert.
Lil.
And I know Lil Uzi Vert is someone that my son has said that they were fans of before. I don't know these guys' music, but I'm not going to disparage it.
Just because we don't know who it is. But again, it's celebrating 50 years. So from the classic to today, this is a great cross section. This is a great, kind of melting pot of a lot of different artists.
And another thing, because I'm looking at this list, and I guess my eyes are just skipping over certain things here because it's kind of a long list. But Big Boy of Outkast. I mean, how can you leave out Outkast, who now is considered arguably the greatest rap group ever? Who've had crossover hits with Hey Ya and stuff like that. But Outkast, one of the most...
Shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Outkast is one of the most artistically dynamic.
Yeah, very. They cross over to mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, it's, of course, this list can't be all things to all people.
No. When you only have about 12 minutes to cover 50 years, and that you had less than a minute per performer. But it was great to see LL Cool J wearing a Kangol, having his shirt off, having his freaking boom box and everything. And it was all blinged out. So he had the blinged out microphone, the blinged out boom box. LL Cool J is hard as hell. These are the things like I grew up with. I grew up with East Coast New York rap. So I remember hearing Run DMC. I remember hearing The Message, White Line, Go Away. Who did White Line?
That's Grandmaster Flash.
Same one. Okay, right. So King of Rock, Rockbox, even Walk This Way with the Run DMC mix. LL Cool J was Salt and Pepper. A lot of these bands I knew. There's a lot more that I don't know because my memory and times when I fondly listened to hip hop are way in the rearview mirror. But overall, again, it was just a great performance. It was a great celebration of this music style. And everybody they were on it. Everybody was on their A game. And it was great. It was solid entertainment. And again, like I say, if I could buy this, I want to buy it. And I will just watch that thing. I'll put it on a continual loop and just listen to that, It reminds me back, again, in Miami, we would go to these different concerts. I remember seeing Ice-T at a baseball stadium where he was just there with a bunch of other artists, and we're just a bunch of people out in the field watching these shows of all these different artists, these celebrations. Now you have things like Coachella and other concerts where you bring people in. But again, I remember growing up seeing Ice-T, and I was so far away I couldn't tell. I thought he was white. I didn't know who he was. It was just who is this guy? I can't see him. Everything else, but it was great listening to this music. And so this was a great way to kind of see like a hip hop rap concert. Great stuff. Great performance. I don't know what we need to say about that. I do want to ask you just a couple of questions because you're definitely more of a rap connoisseur than I am. But there's so many things I remember about rap music. Again, some of the style and the influences. And again, it used to be about my Adidas and my Kangol and then the big gold chains. And it was all about what I got. and showing off and bragging rights and the gold chains and then the platinum and the grills and all these things that kind of came along with this notoriety of hip hop. Those are some of my memories of that, for better or worse. What do you think about some of those influences? And I'll give you another example. Maybe it's if let's say it's a bad influence. I'm not saying it is, but if it was a bad influence, in the 80s, we also had what we call hair rock or glam rock, where all the guys wore makeup and their hair was blown out with freaking hairspray and they looked like chicks, you know. So there's things that the musical styles did, for better or worse, that we can now look back on and say, really, did we need the gold chains? Did we need the rope chains? Did we need things? So what do you think about that style and that kind of possession? I got to show you how much I got.
Well, the thing is, a lot of that is just inherently part of the genre since day one. It's a genre that is built on braggadocio and sort of self-aggrandizement and sort of being larger than life, being the center of the room. You're the master of the MC, the master of ceremonies.
Right.
You get the party started. You sing the praises of the DJ. You sing the praises of your crew. You sing the praises of where you're from. You sing the praises of yourself. So some of that's inherent to it, and it still hasn't gone away because the trap stuff is still very, the jewelry, everything, all that stuff is still very much there. I think it's one of those things. Are there negative aspects to it? Yeah, but I also think that rap music is like anything else. It's neither 100% negative nor 100% positive.
Right. Well, it's definitely influential, and it influenced culture. It influenced fashion. In a way, I'm not saying this in a mean-spirited way. This is my thought process on this. But a lot of people who are rappers, well, they're from the street. They're from the hoods. And when you're in the hood isn't known for being, not everybody there is wealthy. So if I'm this hood kid, and now I'm making money and I can afford to wear the gold chains and show that off as a status symbol, that's just me showing my people I've made it. I've made some money. Well, yeah, is that part of it too? Is saying like, I've arrived, I got bank.
Well, it's reinvention. It's a lot. There's a theme. There's always been a theme throughout the history of rap music of reinvention. Of this is a way. If you're whatever you're doing. I mean, Run DMC. The funny thing is, Run DMC, who is famous for injecting a lot of street style into hip hop in terms of how they dressed and because before them, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and a lot of these guys, they dressed sort of like a cross between punk rockers and some of these funk bands like Parliament Funkadelic, and there was a lot of just they looked like almost like holdovers or background players from the Mad Max movies, and then but then Run DMC, famously Jam Master Jay, I think it was Russell Simmons or somebody told the other, Run and DMC, okay, dress like how Jay dresses. Jay dressed like the hustlers from Queens.
Okay.
But these Run DMC, they were largely suburban guys from Queens. Okay. They were not really like,
but hardcore
street guys.
They established a look. And that look became the look of hip hop, and that influenced the style. And then every kid hearing that music or watching those videos wanted to dress like that, to be part of that scene. Like rock and roll, I wanted a leather jacket. I wanted to grow my hair long to look like all the rock dudes on MTV. So that style, that culture influenced me. Wanting to have cowboy boots, not because I rode a horse, but because cowboy boots was kind of a rock and roll thing. Having your jeans and your boots and your leather jacket, the whole Bon Jovi look, that was just a thing. That different styles of music ends up having a fashion or a style with it, and then people who are fans of that genre want to embrace that style to show this is who I am. I'm a rock dude. I'm a rap dude. Whatever. Right?
It becomes a bigger thing, and also. Via Run DMC, I think they did a show at Madison Square Garden where I think they invited some executives from Adidas to see the show, and at one point,
my Adidas.
Run told the people in the audience, put your Adidas up in the air, and then like 90% of the audience puts up Adidas, and then
they could see the power they had. They back before the term influencer was a thing. These guys were influencing sales, and they weren't even necessarily like one of the movies we're going to talk about, the Air Jordans, the story of Air Jordans. These guys were influencing product sales that they weren't necessarily sponsoring or getting residuals for endorsement deals.
Well, there's been brands of all kinds that hip hop has bolstered and have become more popular because of
The
it.
Kangol hats, man, like the bucket hat and like the whole little thing with the rim. Everybody had a Kangol back in the day.
But like I said, to just bring it back around, like it's one of those things. It's like anything else, any heavy metal, any other youth movement. There are positive and negative aspects to what goes on. It's not just one or the other. There's things you can. Is it materialistic? Yes. Is it sort of narcissistic self-aggrandizement? Yes. But people also have to remember too. This is a form of entertainment. It's like you cannot look to entertainment as being sort of rap music is not a documentary about the streets. It's entertainment. It has one foot in reality, but.
And then there's the whole showmanship performance piece of this, where we have to make this entertaining to listen to as well as to watch.
Right.
It has influenced music and twerking and all kinds of stuff. All the booty girls shaking their rumps on the videos. That's just influenced so many different things. Another thing rap music has really been infamous for is the lifting of beats. Where let's take Rapper's Delight. Rapper's Delight took the beat to Good
Chic,
Times.
From Chic, yeah.
Yeah. So from the beginning, rap music historically started off using lots of samples. Now, when you get into somebody like Dr. Dre, who's a producer, he's creating original music now to it, and that's created a whole new sound. But older school rap music, like even Tone Loc, Wild Thing, that's got a little bit of Jamie's Crying. Rock Box and these other ones, King of Rock, a lot of things were lifting little Van Halen riffs and things like that and sampling that kind of stuff, which I feel is creative and ingenuity and inventive, but it was also criticized. Well, how can you consider yourself a musician when you don't play an instrument and you're not even playing original music? You're basically talking over music. You're not singing. Your rapping is talking. And so there were a lot of criticisms on the kind of stealing beats and ripping riffs and biting styles, as they used to say back in the day, right? So it's evolved from there, but those were some of the stigmas that were with early rap.
Well, still, and to be honest, in Dr. Dre, he hasn't gotten completely away from the samples because
the Tupac changes. That's Bruce Hornsby in the Range.
Yeah, that's Bruce Hornsby. But and also with Dr. Dre, Ain't Nothing But a G Thing. That's I Want to Do Something Funky to You by Leon Haywood. He literally replays it. Some of the things that he's done with Snoop Dogg. I think was Gin and Juice. You talking about Snoop D-O-W-G? Yeah. D-O-W-G? Gin and Juice is...
For shizzle.
Gin and Juice is made for... That's the beat for that was I Get Lifted. But like what Dre would do is he would bring in session players and replay it, but he would also add elements.
Add more layers to it.
Add elements to it. But again, that comes from the block party days. The DJ would spin popular hits of the time, and when they would isolate the breakdown, use the mixer and two turntables to isolate that part of the song that got everybody to dance, and
loop it,
and you get the rapper just to kind of talk smack over it.
Yeah,
That's sort of the beginnings of it. So you kind of, and it's important to mention that too. It kind of began with not necessarily taking old records. This is before it became a recorded genre. Not taking old records, you were taking the current hits of the day.
And just mixing it up, using the beat. It took a beat that people can identify with, and now let me just throw down my track on top of this.
Yeah. It's so, but just to wrap it up, because we could go. I could go on.
Well, we're gonna do the history of hip hop at some point.
At some point.
So,
I could go on and on.
No, but it's good. Hopefully, usually this is not my area of expertise, but I have enough familiarity that hopefully I've been a yang to your yin. So
like I said, with these songs, I could half of these, like probably more than half of these songs I've owned, and I bought them if not the day of release, like soon after they were released, so I could go on and on about what I've read in the liner notes and even conversations I've had, because like I said, I'm blessed to be friends with Cool Rock to be Facebook friends with Cool Rock from the Fat Boys, with Johnny Rosado, aka Johnny Juice, who's a member of the Bomb Squad and produced with Public Enemy, and also a member of the Furious Five, Raheem, who announced on his Facebook page before it became official that he was going to be a part of this tribute with the Furious Five. And I remember thinking, wow, this is huge. They called him, and so it's kind of just, like I said, I mean, we could go on and on.
Yeah, 50 years of hip hop.
Yeah.
And so when you do your history of hip hop, we're going to have to break it down like probably by decades. Like maybe do the 70s and 80s as one chapter, the 90s as another, and the 2000s as another. But hip hop's got a long history. But yeah, I'm just going to repeat myself and kind of summarize that. It was an amazing performance. So
Yeah,
as rock solid entertainment as it was, my wife and I both were watching that and we're like, oh man, this is it. This is lit. So to me, that was the highlight of the Grammy. So we're not going to talk about every freaking category and things like that. And I just want to talk about a little bit. Now, we'd also just had a Super Bowl this past weekend. And I'm not a huge sports fan. My wife is definitely more of a football fan. But for those who don't know who played in the Super Bowl, it was the Kansas City Chiefs against the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles started the season strong. They were undefeated for almost half the season. So Eagles early on seemed like they were a Super Bowl contender. Kansas City's been doing great forever. Patrick Mahomes, great quarterback. Definitely deserved to be there. Tom Brady retired this year. We'll leave Tom Brady alone. Although he came to my state, Florida, I'm annoyed at Brady. I'm annoyed at New England fans and Steelers fans. Because the guys from the Northeast who come down to Florida and just talk smack about their teams, it's like, dude, you're in my state. Shut up, right? So, but yeah, so a great Super Bowl. Super Bowl is known for commercials, tons of commercials. Again, talking about the industry. Snoop Dogg's doing commercials now for slippers. I mean, come on. Snoop Dogg's doing commercials for freaking Corona, right? So, again, is it selling out or is it cashing in? Brother, getting paid. I'm not here to judge. Snoop D-O-G is always cool with me. But there was like something like 51 commercials. One of the commercials I remember seeing, to me, which was the biggest waste of $1 million, because it's at least $1 million for this 30-second spot. It was a freaking QR code. It said, scan now. For what? I have no idea. It was a commercial for a QR code. Who are these people making these commercials? I have no idea. But since we're more of a pop culture, geek culture, let's just talk about some of the movie trailers, and we can skip the ones that we don't even care about. But they did show a preview for Fast X, Fast and the Furious X, which is now the 10th sequel in the Fast and the Furious franchise, which blows my freaking mind. To me, this was a one-trick pony. The fact they made the second one, which was Tokyo Drift, which had nothing to do with the first one. Was that the third one? Okay, Fast 2. Yeah, I lost track. So I think I've probably seen the first one and the third one. I barely remember the second one. And at that point, I'm like, dude, I don't even know. So it's not been my franchise. To me, the Fast and the Furious was Point Break in cars. It's like you say, Die Hard on a bus, right? It was Point Break with cars.
No, that it was.
And I'm not saying it's a bad franchise. It's just not been my cup of tea. They're on their 10th movie, and the hope this is probably gonna be the last one, possibly.
Well,
who knows?
I used to be a big fan. I was a big fan of Point Break when I first started 14.
Yeah.
And this franchise, Fast and Furious, is over 10 years old. It started in 2001.
Yeah.
I used to be a big fan of it. It started out really as kind of a gearhead thing. If you're into cars and street racing in particular,
then it almost started taking an espionage James Bondy type twist. They started bringing in like The Rock and all these other people, Jason Statham. And
the fifth one is actually the best one in the franchise. I think that came out in 2011. I'm not as big of a fan anymore because I think around when the seventh one came out, I was kind of like. I was just burned out by that point. I was just sort of
well, it's not my cup of tea. I'm not going to poo-poo the franchise, but what I will say on a positive side is that what the Fast and the Furious has been really good about has been always having a multicultural cast, and a lot of diversity, and being a mainstream movie. Because one of the big things about Hollywood is Hollywood's thinking, white people aren't going to see a movie that's mostly about black people. But when you've got a lot of different people of different colors and nationalities in these big blockbuster mainstream things, that to me is great for showing that we are diverse and we are inclusive and that we can theoretically all get along, kind of like Star Trek, where we're imagining a future that's better than the real one. But the fact that it is so multi-generational, multicultural, and it's mainstream, and it's successful, it's on its 10th sequel, to me says something about Hollywood can be more inclusive and still be profitable. So I'd like to see more of that, but not my personal favorite. But there is Jason Momoa is now freaking Aquaman. Is in Fast 10. So they're getting some big. Jason Statham's back in it. There's going to be because there's probably going to be going out with a bang. There's going to be a lot of star power in this one. So it'll be a good ride. It'll be a good movie to watch. I might watch this one and say, okay, but I'm not going to watch the previous 7 or 8 that I've missed at this point.
I'll
So.
watch. I mean, I'll watch it just for the sake of being a completionist because I saw the other ones.
Okay.
But I'm not necessarily excited at this point. So, like I said, the peak for me was 5.
There you go.
So
Now, and again, you mentioned that we probably need to dedicate more time on another episode to the trailer for the Flash movie that I think that's now going to be coming out in June. At one point in time, it might have been called Flashpoint or whatever, but this is the controversial movie because Ezra Miller's had so much drama with legal issues, mental health issues, domestic violence issues, etc. And now that the DC Warner Brothers has been taken over by James Gunn and they're kind of trying to start a whole new slate and a whole new direction, there's so many rumors of what could have been in here and what now might be wiped out and changed. But one of the things that was rumored from early on was seeing Michael Keaton. And in the trailer now, we've seen Michael Keaton Batman. There's a million things that go on in that trailer, but there's a scene that looks like we see the Christopher Nolan Batman with the big fat tire on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
So it looks like we see, what's the actor's name? I'm drawing a blank right now. The guy who played Batman from the Dark Knight trilogy.
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale. So there might be a Christian Bale, although we didn't see a close-up of him. We saw his motorcycle. We definitely see Michael Keaton's Batman in there in the bat suit from 1989, the whole Tim Burton look, and he's looking freaking badass. We see 2 different versions of Barry Allen. There's possibly bringing in the Barry Allen from the CW TV show, although I don't remember seeing him in the trailer. There is a super person. I'm not sure if it's Superman and if Henry Cavill's Superman, but we also see what looks like a Supergirl. And I don't know if this is the official Supergirl, who's technically Superman's cousin, or this is some other variant of a Kryptonian that's still wearing a super suit. But there's a Supergirl in there. There's possibly multiple Batmen. We're dealing with multiple quantum dimension type stuff going on here. So it is going to be a blockbuster movie. This movie's been delayed. It was supposed to be released last year. They keep changing the dates. They keep doing rewrites and reshoots. And now we're seeing the first big trailer. And this trailer to me is... I wanted to see this movie from a long time ago, but now the trailer has really legitimized and kind of whet my appetite to want to see this movie, which I think is now in June. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, no, this is the first trailer for any DC-related movie since the start of the DCAU. Is a DC...
Well, now they're just calling it the DCU.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because
DCU.
that first acronym is just always
it's not the extended universe or the...
But this is the first trailer that they've put out, and excuse me, since starting off with the Zack Snyder / Christopher Nolan vision for the DC movies, and Christopher Nolan was a part of. I think he was one of the listed as one of the producers or executive producers on Man of Steel, but. This is the first trailer for DC in the last decade or so that's actually got me excited for something from them. I just recently read Flashpoint. If they stick to the basics of the story, I'm not one of these guys that really loses my mind over them changing certain details or whatever, because movies and comics are 2 different mediums. So, But if they stick to the basics of the story, they should have a really good movie on their hands. And I mean, this trailer just, I think, does a great job of selling it. The reveal of Michael Keaton. I mean, everybody already knew that he was going to be in this, but
there was rumors that they were going to take it all out because they're changing directions. So the fact that we see Michael Keaton's Batman and we see Ben Affleck's Batman in there, and possibly a Christian Bale, although we see him from a distance, I'm not sure if he's going to be there. But we're seeing at least 2 different Batmen. Now they're not going to do the Twilight guy one because he's technically his own thing.
But the reveal, the ultimate reveal of Michael Keaton in that trailer, it makes you feel like, excuse me, it makes you feel like you didn't know it was coming, even though
it's been rumored for years.
The way they pull it off. Because when I was watching it, I wasn't even, I was kind of watching it. And I was like, okay, this looks really good. And then when they brought him into it, it's just okay. Now I'm really sold on this, and. There's a sense of urgency and immediacy in that trailer. There's a sense that the things that happen in this are going to matter. And that's what I look for. Yeah. In these kinds of films. Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the real world, we've been doing nothing but hearing and reading about how Warner Brothers and DC just can't the left hand doesn't know the right hand exists and everything else. And so they keep changing directions and recasting and reshooting. This was shot years ago before the takeover of James Gunn and the changing of all the executives. So James Gunn's got a whole new direction. However, Aquaman 2 has been in the can for a while, and there was all the Amber Heard controversy going on where she might be edited out of there because of her and the whole Johnny Depp fiasco thing. So there's been a lot of DC properties that have already been filmed that were supposed to already be on screen, but because of either legal issues or now kind of corporate changes in ownership and directions of the studio, a lot of these things have been delayed and possibly even getting changed from this to kind of match the new direction. Where even like Black Adam was supposed to be before James Gunn, Dwayne Johnson's vision was Black Adam's going to reignite the DC cinematic universe because it was starting to falter.
There's been a lot of fallout from
There's been a lot of fallout from him and everything. So hopefully, I can't imagine this movie sucks. So I'm sure this movie is going to be solid entertainment, but I also hope that this movie is an indication of the direction of DC moving forward. So we'll just leave it at that. Another one that they teased was Scream 6. And when I saw that, it reminded me, we did around Halloween time, we did an episode about the movies that scared us or scary movies, and I was trying to remember newer scary movies, and I completely forgot about things like Scream, Final Destination. I know what you did last summer. So apparently now Scream 6, and I'm not sure if this is Scream 6 from the original run or if this is Scream 6 from a reboot, because I know they did a Scream reboot. I lost track. I remember seeing the first two Screams, and they were really innovative new styles of horror. But now we're on Scream 6, of which strain of Scream, I'm not sure. I don't care because I'm not going to see it. If you're a fan of that, see it. Let us know how you thought about it. The one I did like, though, is Transformers 7, Rise of the Beast, because now we're getting into, there was a whole animated series called Transformers Beast Wars, right? So this is the Rise of the Beast, and we got to see like a big gorilla transformer beating his chest. You get to see, again, Optimus Prime. They're up in the game on the speed and the action and the pacing and the whole animation of them transforming in the midair and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be solid entertainment. I've lost track of how many movies and how we've changed actors. How I went from Shia LaBeouf to Mark Wahlberg to, I'm not even sure who's in Transformers now. And then they did a Bumblebee that was supposed to be like a prequel before. I lost track. I don't even know. I remember seeing a couple of Shia LaBeouf and what's-her-face, the hot chick, Megan Fox, and then I lost track. I've seen a few with Marky Mark. I don't even remember him. But that looks good. Any thoughts you have on that trailer? Do you remember the Beast Wars cartoon at all?
I remember the Beast Wars cartoon very good. A great friend of mine, or it was like a brother to me, more of a family member than a friend. He had an Optimus Primal transform. I think he still has that someplace. I like the show. I don't remember every detail of it, but I did like the show. I'm hoping this can kind of reinvigorate the franchise, even though, look, the Transformers movies aren't really good, but I found some of them entertaining. I'm kind of hoping that they can kind of simplify and streamline things down to make them the kind of kids movies they're supposed to be, but make them simple but fun. Okay. Which I think sometimes the Michael Bay movies sort of were more noisy than they were fun.
And the thing is, I remember seeing the first Transformer movie, and I remember, I saw the trailers. You see it, okay. But in my mind, as an adult, I'm sitting here thinking, how are you going to pull this off? How are you going to make a movie where we're going to believe that these things exist in our reality, and they're now somehow part of our life on Earth struggle? And somehow they did it. They made it believable. They pulled it off. You could just watch it and you can go along with it. So the first did that. But again, it's kind of like with the Fast and the Furious. How many of these things can you make? And are you really making quality entertainment? Or are you just milking that cow until it's dry? Hopefully we'll stay there. Now, another one that looks kind of interesting is a movie called 65, and it's got the Kylo Ren guy. What's his name? The guy who plays Kylo Ren?
I can't remember his name as of yet. He's a
great actor. So anyways, we'll call him Kylo Ren. So this is imagining that humans came to Earth 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs still roam the Earth. So it's basically, they got laser guns, and it's people versus dinosaurs. So it's an action. It's not like dinosaurs came to the future, like in Jurassic Park. It's like people went to the past. But obviously, when they say humans landed on Earth, we're saying that we're from another planet, right? So it is people that are like modern day humans with laser guns or normal guns, and they're in the thick of dinosaur action. So can you take it seriously? Not for a second. Will it be fun to watch? I sure as hell hope so. The people, dinosaur. Like, remember there was a comic book and a video game called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. It made me think of that. Matter of fact, I would like to see a movie based on Cadillacs and dinosaurs. I've seen this trailer because I've seen a bunch of the newer movies. They've been teasing this Dungeons and Dragons movie in movie theater coming attractions for a while. And it's got Christopher Pine as the thief. It's taking place in the fantasy universe based on the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game, pen and paper RPG game going way back to the early 70s. So the name Dungeons and Dragons has been used and misused through the years. It was a really cool animated series that I watched as a kid that was based on this, where these kids went on a Dungeons and Dragons ride as like in a theme park, somehow magically got transported to an actual universe with Dungeons and Dragons and had to fight, dragons and monsters and orcs and kobolds and stuff. This is going to be interesting to see. I'm not sure if it's going to be serious or if it's going to be kind of like a Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, where they're going to be humor heavy in here too. But it's going to be entertaining, that's for sure. And if we can plan on seeing it together, I definitely wouldn't mind seeing that with you.
I'm not too knowledgeable about Dungeons and Dragons, save for the Saturday morning cartoon back in the 80s. I'll check it out, but I'm going in cold.
Because it doesn't matter, because Dungeons and Dragons is such an open-ended thing. It's more of a concept than anything. So you can't, there's been no movies, there's been no nothing, but they're using the names. This is a marketable, patented, franchisey type name. It's going to be a fantasy adventure. And Chris Pine is great. He's mostly known for playing the newer Captain Kirk and the J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot, but he was in Wonder Woman 84. He's done a bunch of other stuff too. He's a good actor. I like him. I think he'll do good. This trailer looks really good. Indiana Jones 5 in the Dial of Destiny. And the thing I am most happy about is that hopefully he's going to redeem the Crystal Skull fiasco, but also seeing John Rhys Davis again, who was his best bosom buddy in the first 2 or 3 movies. So to see him in there, the trailer looks good. It looks like this is going to be a legit, proper indie movie in the flavor and feel of the first 3. And I expect to not be disappointed. I know you were somewhat reluctant about it, have your reservations. I want to remain optimistic and feel like I'm going to be solidly entertained and not nitpicky on this.
Well, I'm going to, like I said, again, I'm going to see it. I'm just I'm also at a point in my life where the prospect of seeing these sort of legacy franchises or these things revived that, I have a huge affinity for. Like, that doesn't excite me the way that it used to. I'm fine. I would rather they have, if Indiana Jones needs to continue, I would rather them do it without Harrison Ford and just recast the role, which I know a lot of fans aren't going to like, but I'd rather see that than to sort of have, now.
And it almost felt like when Brandon Fraser did The Mummy that he was on track to be the next generation's Indiana Jones. And that character of him in The Mummy was very Indiana Jonesy, very Harrison Fordy. You know what I mean? It felt like that franchise could have been along those lines. This is a movie I'm actually not excited about at all, but the Super Mario Brothers movie, I love the first 2 Sonic movies. I'm not a Mario guy. When we talked about video games, I said I was a Sega guy. Sonic was my dude. Mario was never my dude. There's a lot of, so it's obviously computer animated. It's, it's like a Disney Pixar thing, the Super Mario Brothers movie. I've seen trailers for it in the theaters. It looks interesting. The controversy here is they're using Chris Pratt to do the voice of Mario. And most of the people who are fans of this franchise and this legacy, they would prefer they pick the voice actor who did the voice of Mario for all the games, going back to, I think the first game where Mario got a voice was like Nintendo 64 when it went to 3D. And there's a guy, I don't remember his name, but he's a famous actor. He's like, it's a Mario, right? So I think they wanted him. The fans wanted the video game voice actor, and they got frickin' Chris Pratt. So Does Chris Pratt sound anything like a plumber to you? He sounds like Chris Pratt to me. So, but I'm not a fan of the Mario legacy or the games or the mythology. It's just not my cup of tea. I'll probably see it with my friends Johnny, Mo, and Claudia because they're big fans of this. I'm hoping to be entertained, but I am completely skeptically reserved on thinking this movie is not going to completely suck. It's going to have to really be good to meet my expectations. So
I'm a little bit more optimistic about this one because one, I believe that this is before any other video game movie. This probably should have been the first one that was made. Because I've always been curious about if you did a Mario movie, a Mario Brothers movie, you did it right, not that debacle from 1993, that live action one, but you're doing it.
Bob Hoskins.
Yeah,
from
but you're
Roger
doing it
Rabbit.
animated, which is actually that's already a step up because I think that the Mario universe is so fantastical that it will probably be better rendered in CG animation rather than trying to do it live action. And I've always gotten a kick out of the character. He's a guy who jumps and throws fireballs and does other stuff, and none of it makes any sense, and it's just fun.
Always trying to rescue Princess Peach.
But I think this is like the Sonic movie. I think that this one has potential to surprise a lot of people by how good it will turn out.
I want it to not suck, but I'm predicting I'm not going to like it just because I'm jaded and I'm an anti-Nintendo, anti-Mario person in general. So
no, I've just had an affinity for the character. He's just kind of goofy and funny, and although it's very stereotypical. But
it's a Mario. What's the matter, you?
But we'll see. Like I said, I'm not banking on it being a life-changing experience, but I think it's something I'll probably end up. I like that first trailer that they put out.
Where the little people are sneaking up on the castle or something like that. Yeah.
I like that.
It looked interesting, but
it was funny. Fighting with snowballs and thinking that's going to do anything.
Yeah,
but,
it's very cutesy.
Now the next one up is Creed 3, which I'm kind of looking forward to because the first Creed was a great revival of the Rocky franchise, and it was a movie that I'm noticing as time goes on, not everybody has seen or not everybody's really up on, but no, it was really an unexpectedly entertaining extension of the Rocky franchise. The second one was just kind of okay. It wasn't bad. It brought back Ivan Drago and Drago's son, who was the antagonist in that one. But this one is sort of giving the Adonis Creed character his own Clubber Lang with his name escapes me right now.
The guy who's playing Kang the Conqueror right now too, and he looks buffed. He is this powerhouse, but boom, 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 boom.
But he's a strong actor. He was in The Harder They Fall, a black western that was on Netflix, which is really good. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's really a fun time, a fun watch. He's the protagonist in that, and he's just. I think Michael B. Jordan directed this one.
Now, help me understand something. I believe I understand. So the whole idea of Creed was Michael B. Jordan. Is he playing the son of Apollo Creed, who was Rocky's first opponent?
The illegitimate son.
Ooh, okay.
Of Apollo.
So he is the legacy of Rocky Balboa's initial first big battle.
Yeah. And Rocky sort of trains him as sort of penance for allowing Apollo to die in Rocky
because
4.
he got killed by Dolph Lundgren.
But
in Rocky 3 was it?
4.
Rocky 4. I can't even keep up.
But
because Rocky 3 was Mr. T.
But Creed was directed by Ryan Coogler, who went on to do Black Panther. And Creed was unexpectedly good because people were kind of laughing at the idea when it was first announced, and then when the movie came out, they were like, "Whoa, this is actually good."
And this was probably one of the movies that put Michael B. Jordan on the map.
Yes.
As just a legitimate actor. Although, most people don't realize he was also the Human Torch in the mediocre Fantastic Four movie that came out.
Mediocre is putting it very nicely.
But he redeemed himself as in the Black Panther. And I just watched Wakanda Forever the other night. Again, he's so good, his character. So Michael B. Jordan is definitely... he's a household name at this point, but that was probably one of the movies that put him on the map. Yeah, I would definitely like to see that.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's directing this, and I'm hoping, because the trailers make it look like Rocky 3 Redux,
Yeah.
or Rocky 3 Remix, and I'm hoping there's more to it. I'm hoping they can take that formula and sort of embellish it, flesh it out in ways that are different than just that Rocky 3 formula, you know, of a grudge match and, you know, that sort of thing. But we'll see. And the last on the list is Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
And I want to see it. I know I'm going to be entertained. But I almost feel like at this point now, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think some of this has to do with Thor Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder, but I feel like the humor heavy Marvel blockbusters are really letting some of the fun out of the balloon for me.
I'm feeling that way too.
So, where Guardians of the Galaxy, when it first came out, especially the first one, these were not mainstream characters. Unless you're a diehard fan, you had no, and me being one of them. I knew they existed. I've actually got some of their old comic books in my box in my garage, but I never read the comic book, so I'm not that familiar with the characters. So the fact that they were able to make a hugely successful movie on non-mainstream characters, and that it was pretty much a comedy action movie, it was a nice break from some of the much more dramatically heavy Marvel movies when it first came out. But I feel like the humor card in the Marvel universe now is being played so heavy-handedly and so frequently that I think it's going to be overdone. And so while I know this is still going to be that mix, and this was also written and directed by James Gunn, who did the first one. I don't remember if he did the second one or not.
Yes, he did.
So it's going to be good. It's going to have that style. But I kind of feel like the whole I'm Star-Lord, I'm the funny, ironic kind of guy. I feel like that one-trick pony has already been played, but I want to see it. I'm optimistic. In the trailer, we see a flying dude who's just flying through the air, almost looking like the Human Torch, although I know it's not the Human Torch. I have a feeling that this might be Nova. And Nova is a character that I know exists. I don't know too much about him, but they've alluded in the first two Guardians of the Galaxy, they call the Nova Corps. But Nova is a character who had kind of like a golden metal helmet, like a dark navy blue suit with some like little yellow dots on it and stuff. And is a guy who had superpowers that could fly. That's about as much as I know about Nova. But I know he existed, and he was in the Marvel universe. So I think we've been dropping these little, planting these little seeds and Easter eggs of the Nova Corps, and finally figuring out who Nova is. So I have a feeling we're going to see that. We have now another interesting thing too is what's his girlfriend's name? Zoe Saldana. What's her name in the movie? The green chick.
Oh boy. Oh man.
Anyways, so she died. She died at the end of Endgame, right? Because she had to be sacrificed, right? So what's his face? Thanos sacrificed his daughter, so she was gone. But in this one, we now have a variant from another universe. And so now it's like the person who used to be his love interest is now a complete stranger to him. So there's that whole chemistry and conflict and calamity that will ensue from there. So that's going to be interesting to see how her name... I wish I could remember her name right now. I'm so bad. But yeah, so she's in there. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'm definitely going to want to see it, but I almost feel like as much as I'm a fan of all the Marvel stuff, they've given us so much. And again, these things have been in the makings for a while. I just hope it's not going to be too exhausting, that the humor is not going to overshadow the story.
I'm hoping the same thing. I mean, to be honest with you, the Guardians of the Galaxy, I like the first two movies. Actually, I'm one of the few that like the second one better than the first. I enjoyed them but at this point, I think those particular characters have run their course for me. I don't know that I need to see the further adventures of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, it's Marvel
as their own solo feature.
Yeah,
if they're mixed in.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Marvel. That's not going to change. But I'm going to be honest. I think at this point the Marvel machine needs a new paint job.
Needs some retooling, right?
It needs a little bit, because I think they've taken a lot of the house style, so to speak. I think it's been taken as far as it can go in certain directions, and I think now it's kind of time probably to take a new approach. I mean, Kevin Feige, he's done such a great job up until this point. I'm wondering if maybe he's there's something that he has in the works that we don't know about as of yet. But like, yeah, I'm kind of it's, and I don't want to piss off any of our listeners, but or anybody who may be listening, but I'm kind of reaching a point where it's hard to get excited for new Marvel product because we've gotten so much.
There's so much, yeah, and it's almost to the point where it's like I always think of that Forrest Gump quote. I went to the White House again. I got to meet the president again. It's like almost the things that should be amazing. It's like, oh, again, really? I got to meet the president again? I mean, come on, how many times?
Right.
So it's just like,
right,
yeah, they've given us so much, and then the problem is now is it's almost oversaturation with all the Disney Plus stuff and everything else. Quality over quantity. They really beat us over the head with the humor hammer. I think it needs to be, with everything, it should be a balance where you want some humor. Humor needs to break up the tension, but at its core, these should be somewhat dramatic. We're dealing with big scale conflict here. And I think one of the ones that's going to kick off Phase 5 is probably going to be Ant-Man and the Quantumania, which, again, speaking of live action, so Kang the Conqueror was first revealed to us at the end of Loki Season 1, and so now we're going to see a lot of Kang the Conqueror, who I know by name, but again, because I haven't read a comic book in forever, I don't know all his spiel, but we're going to see Marvel's movie version of him now in this. So that's going to be interesting. And the whole Quantum Mania, opening up different realms, again, getting into the multiverse, which we got with Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. We're opening things up to where we can have more things. Again, kind of like with the Flashpoint, showing the Michael Keaton Batman. The fact that we got to see a little bit of, like in the Doctor Strange, we got to see Patrick Stewart's Professor X make an appearance. We got to see John from The Office play Reed Richards from the Fantastic, the most brilliant man alive who got shredded into rubber bands in 2 seconds. Things like that. So seeing variants is a great idea. It's a way to give us a new take on things we know. I know a lot of people are itching to see a variant of Tony Stark, and people are wanting to see Tom Cruise be that Tony Stark. So maybe we'll get to see that. I think Robert Downey Jr. is probably like, I've done it enough. I've made my money. I gave it all for King and Country. Let somebody else carry that. So at that point, it's probably best to be done by a variant. I know Chris Evans has been talking about maybe would he do some Captain America stuff as a flashback or something else like that. I don't think he'd do another title. I think we are due for like the Falcon version of Captain America and things like that. So there's things in the pipeline that I think are going to be compelling. I just feel like we've seen Guardians of the Galaxy twice. Is the third one going to be too much? I hope not. I hope it's going to be a good balance. Humor is good, but when it's super humor heavy, it gets to be old, So, and then, I don't know. Was there an Ant-Man Quantumania? I know there was one he did as a Heineken commercial, where the Ant-Man did a Heineken commercial, and I don't know if that fed into the movie or not.
I don't need to see any more material on Quantumania. I just would rather see the movies coming out this week.
Yeah.
I don't need any more trailers at this point.
Yeah, so, that one's got my appetite is wet to see Quantumania. I really want to see where that goes. So, all right, well, we longer than usual show, and that's okay. We talked about a lot. But these were the two big things that just happened this past weekend between the Grammys and the Super Bowl, and we could have covered a lot more. But at this point now, we're coming up on an hour and a half, so we're going to put a fork in this. I'll just mention one thing, too. I just got notified from Anchor FM/Spotify, which is our podcast host. We have now reached 500 downloads on the audio podcast. So that is a little milestone. So congratulations.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you to everyone who's listened, because when I designed this show, I wanted it to be a listenable show. We're now going into the live streaming of the video, which is also getting us some more exposure. But I like to listen to this kind of stuff when I'm driving, because unfortunately I spend way too much time in the car. So for those who have listened 500 times now, thank you for that. Other than that, yes, this concludes another episode. Any final thoughts, parting words, Mr. Scott T. Wilson?
No real parting words as of yet. I'm looking forward to seeing how the movies that these trailers are meant to advertise turn out. My money, if I were a betting man, I'm thinking that The Flash and Super Mario Brothers are going to be the best of the bunch.
I was going to say The Flash would be my first pick. And I want to see Creed, because I haven't seen any of them. So I am completely not looking forward to seeing Super Mario, but I will. I want to see Indiana Jones. I want to see Guardians. But all these ones, I think the one that I'm going to be the most wowed by is going to be The Flash. My prediction.
That's easy. That's an easy answer. Like that's the best trailer of the bunch. That's the one that's going to have the most people talking. I mean, like like I said, that's the most impressive trailer I've seen for a DC film in over a decade.
Absolutely. And so, and something that I've been wanting to do for a while with this show, and I've got people lined up that I need to start planting and scheduling, but I want to start doing some interviews with different people who are doing interesting things. So we have the Collector's Comics people. There's a guy who I just talked to recently who did a video game, the plane shooting game that was called Raptor. And so he reached out to us, and so I'd like to talk to him about making that iconic game. There's another lady I speak to who's doing something with Amazon Alexa, where she's creating interactive entertainment for seniors who can't get out of bed and stuff. So she's doing some cool stuff using Amazon technology to create these stories that kind of bedridden people can listen to and still be entertained and talk to and interact with. And so there's some people who I've had a chance to meet that I want to be able to interview to bring just something different than just you and I talking all the time. Not that this is bad, but there's so much more that we can do and that I want to do. So I'm going to be working on some of that stuff in the pipeline for future episodes. Other than that, thank you, Scott. Mm-hmm. We're here in person, Scott and I together in the same room at the same time, which is always a bonus. And that's it. I got a really creaky chair. I'm hoping that these creaky sounds don't permeate the audio playback because it's been driving me crazy. I have to bring a second chair in my office when Scott comes. So that's it. Thanks all for listening and watching, and we'll see you guys next week. What are we going to talk about next week, Scott? Any idea?
Probably Quantumania.
All right, we'll probably talk about Quantumania next week. There you have it, folks. Take care. God bless.